Hi, I'm Roger Scholey, today with Ray Ashley at the San Diego Maritime Museum. He's leaving after 30 years at the helm of this great museum complex, and he's going to show us around today the several vessels that are on display, starting with the Star of India. So tell us a bit about the history of the Star of India.
Well, so the ship we're on now, almost everything you see is original to when she was built in 1863. So she's the oldest active ship, we say, in the world. We have competition for that, but we stick with that. And when you look at the frames and the iron, those rivets were driven when Abraham Lincoln was President of the United States. And she does continue to sail. We currently sail her about every 5 years or so. So she's probably one of the most iconic things in San Diego. It's one of the things people recognize most about San Diego, and particularly the waterfront. She came here in 1927 as part of the zoo, and ultimately separated from the zoo, the museum did in 1948. Restoration in the 1960s and 70s was one of the very first large-scale historic preservation projects undertaken by the city and its community.
So it took 40 years to go from acquisition actually doing something.
It kind of did, yeah, it did. So we'd like to remind everybody that we started as part of the zoo.
You have quite a staff of people, of volunteers and staff to do all this work, right? What sort of workforce do you
Well, the main workforce is actually volunteers. Now, they're supervised by professionals, but I would say, for the museum in its entirety, about half the productive labor necessary to make the place work is done by volunteers. Well, this is the high rent district, so the average passenger never saw this part of the ship, actually. This is pretty nice living here, actually, by comparison.
This seems like an awful lot of maintenance to keep all this wood up and everything.
Well, it's down below.
Yeah.
You know, it's out of the sun, so that keeps you from eating up the varnish. And this deck doesn't leak, but the original one would have, so yeah, you would have to do that. But, you know, the people that were living here were the officers, that this was their life, or there were people paying a lot of money to be here. So.
And the crew in those days, what would it have been? How many people?
Well, when we sail the ship today, there's about 60 people in the crew. That's about twice what she would have been in her working life. No one would have predicted that a ship intended to last for about a dozen years ends up being more than 160 years old and still sailing. So it really is a pretty unique thing. Put another way, just in British registry, there were 10,000 large sailing ships in the registry when this ship was built, of which she is the sole survivor.
Surprise is, recognized by some people because it was in the Master and Commander movie, right?
That was her moment of fame. She began life as a replica of a 757 frigate, which was a small class of warship called the HMS Rose. And they're just, when they decided to do that movie based on the Patrick O'Brian novels, it's a pretty big deal to try and build something like this. And she was just about the only one that could be converted. So they took the HMS Rose from the 1750s and turned her into the ship in the novels, the HMS Surprise, which was originally built as a French frigate in reality, and then captured and brought into the Royal Navy. And anyway, so she was built in Nova Scotia, and she had several kinds of occupations, you know, as a charter boat, as a restaurant ship, you know, and things like that. But it really wasn't until she got into that movie that she kind of had a second life. But nobody ever had this kind of headroom on a ship in this period. So we built these decks up here to reflect what it would have actually been like. And the men would have been living here between the guns. And like, as I mentioned, guns are gigantic compared to what she really would have had. Not that these are unusual. If you go on HMS Victory today, these would not be the biggest guns on the Victory in Portsmouth.
So these are 24 pounders?
These are 24 pounders, yeah.
And the whole...
it just destroyed the frames and everything. I mean, the ship wouldn't have been strong enough to take the recoil from that.
I see. So what do you call this room?
Well, this would be the great cabin.
Great cabin.
Yeah, and this is wood here, but it would have been coated with a checkerboard, a canvas, black and white checkerboard, kind of a rug, and you know, it would have been nice. I mean, this is where the captain lives, and he hangs out with his friends. You know?
Do you ever come here with a couple of friends and just
We've
play
had
cards or something, like a little party?
We've had book club meetings here, and we've had other meetings here occasionally, and occasionally people want to charter the boat.
So you said you don't take this out. Did you take it out when it first got here?
When we first got here, yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, we are slowly rebuilding the entire ship.
I see.
And so we've pretty much got to continue on with that process for some time.
All right, moving along. So tell us a bit about the Berkeley, this ferry boat from what?
Right.
San Francisco.
Yeah, well, she was built in 1898, and she was the westernmost extremis of the Southern Pacific Railroad at the conclusion of the great age of railroad building, you know, Credit Mobilier and the robber barons and all that. Anyway, she was designed to carry people and stuff, not automobiles or anything, but people and stuff, but between the various bayside cities in San Francisco Bay, principally Berkeley, San Francisco, and Oakland.
So I think I read that you've had about 100 exhibitions in your 30 years.
Yep. So the most recent one, and this will be here through about June, I think.
Artifact.
It's called the Art of Navigation. I teach a class in the history of navigation every few years, and I thought, well, you know, if I'm going to teach this class this year, I'll just do an exhibition about that. So between the late 1600s to the late 1700s, the early 1600s to late 1700s, people depicted California as an island. Many people think today that's what we should be, actually. But in any case, there was no geographical reason for it. People had walked to it. It was the longest running geographical error in all of history. Book here by Richard Walter is an account of Anson's voyage, and the idea is the verbiage is artistic, but so is the art.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
They're just beautiful.
Yeah.
And this particular voyage was interesting because Anson sailed around the world with his squadron. Only one ship made it back. He captured the Manila Galleon, richest prize in all of history. Lost. I started out with 2,000 men, got home with 200, and because they didn't know about how to prevent scurvy, most of his men died from scurvy. As it turns out, the only people that don't suffer from scurvy, if you don't have vitamin C, are pregnant and lactating women and young children. And because Anson had been given a regiment of children from an orphanage that he was supposed to conquer all of South America with, it turns out that those kids, which were like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, were the only ones that survived. So when the Centurion here, and they had 24 powder guns like that.
Yeah.
When the Centurion here fought the Manila Galleon, the Nuestra Senora de Comadonga, it was a crew of children. And so when the Spanish captain surrendered and they brought him to the Centurion, he goes, "Where are all the men? I just see children." He said, "Well, that's all there is." He demanded to be sent back to his ship so he could fight the battle again because he just surrendered a bunch of children. The sad thing is, those children, when they got back to England and they were paid off from the haul of gold and silver in the galleon, they were rich, immensely rich, but normal people, particularly children, can't just walk into a bank and deposit money.
Yeah.
So they had all this cash out. Most of them died on the streets of London that very day. They were hunted down for that. And so that story about that, the ship of lost boys who never got to grow up, that sailed around the world, that sort of morphed over the years into the Lost Boys.
Peter Pan. I'll have to come back and spend more time here.
And one of the smaller sails is this topsail right here, right? It's got the California's logo on it, the Maritime Museum's logo on it. It says, one of the smallest sails on one of our middling-sized ships. This is part of that sail.
Wow.
So that gives you a sense of scale, right? Want to see a couple other ships? Okay, all right. San Salvador is the ship that we built ourselves.
Right.
Did the research for her and, the design and completed it. And about 40% of the materials that went into San Salvador were donated, and about 50% of the skilled labor was volunteers. So it really is a product of the community. And since we launched her in 2015, we have sailed her up and down the coast all over the place between Mexico and Monterey. That's the furthest north we've gotten. And we've sailed her about 15,000 miles out at sea, ocean miles. We got California because we were doing our overnight classes on the Star of India, and a gentleman did the class with his kid and was really moved by the experience, and he had some resources, and he was very philanthropical in nature, and called us up and said, "Well, I understand the Californian's for sale. If we bought it and gave it to you, would you take it? Didn't have to think about that too long. So yeah, we said yeah, and so we got the Californian. She was in, like many of them, we get in substantial need of a refit. So we put a lot of effort into her.
So when was this built?
This was built in 1983, just close by the spot that the San Salvador was built. Yeah, they don't trust me the keys to everything, you know, for good reason. I lose things. There's about, I think, 10, 12,000 volumes in the library. We have archives of the original logs of the Star of India. We have lots of ship plans. We have films. We have thousands of photographs. We have hundreds of oral histories. So in a small space, there's a lot of material.
Well, Ray, thank you very much for the tour of the vessels,
Oh, it's a pleasure.
the exhibits, your personal stories about your time in the Maritime Museum, and you're staying off into the future. What are you going to be doing the next few years?
Well, I'll keep busy, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, as we were talking earlier, I hope to write a few books and do some sailing and, you know, other projects as well. So I'll keep busy.
So will you be a visitor here at the museum from time to time?
Well, I don't know if they want me to be or not. That's kind of up to them.
I'm sure they'd love to have you back. As many
Well,
times
that
you
would be
want.
nice if that were true, yes.
All right, well, thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.